evening. Am I on? Okay, just making sure. Good evening. Welcome to those of you who are joining us virtually to our meeting. And we thank you for joining us. Let's see, will you please stand and join me with the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me for a moment of silence. Thank you. Dr. Miller, can we get a roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Lockhart?
Here.
Ms. Lauer? Present. Dr. Powers? Here. Ms. Scott?
Here.
Mrs. Wise? Here. Mr. Burks? Mr. Irwin?
Here. Now is the time on our agenda for first call for citizen comments. I'll just hold up this packet here. Board members have been presented with this throughout the day. We have been forwarded the emails for public comments. We have seen those and had a chance to read over those. We'll now move on to the ratification of the 2020 to 2021 Teacher Collective Bargaining Agreement. And Mr. Cox was unable to be here, so Dr. Hayward is going to do that for us.
And Mr. Cox is on the phone for potential questions. We could ask for a first and second and then discuss any potential items. And I think there was one item that Jackie brought to my attention today that maybe we need to discuss. But for us at this point, board approval is requested to approve the ratification of the 2020-2021 Teacher Collective Bargaining Agreement.
I move approval. I second that.
Dr. Powers made a motion to approve. Mrs. Wise seconded that. And did you have a question, Mrs. Lauer? Is that what Dr. Hayward said?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify that regarding the stipend for those teachers who have earned their master's or their doctorate. And I wanted to make sure that that would just not, if they earn it these next few months, they will receive the stipend, and it is an ongoing stipend year to year, and then the raise will be on top of that. So I just wanted to clarify that, so make sure all the teachers understand that stipend is not a one and only, and never to be repeated. It will repeat every year.
So it gets added to their base, essentially, Dr. Hayward.
The board would not allow us to add it to the base.
Okay,
But it would permit us to do a stipend every year,
okay,
which
okay.
that's how they ask us to do it. But Jackie is right. We would look to apply that stipend every year.
So those who finish in August or May have a.
Correct.
Right, it's retroactive to those who earned it this past, semester.
Retroactive to, so they were in August?
So those that came to us since the start of the school year, in our last contract, we were able to put it on the base. However, Herb looked at it differently. So we would not only need those, but those are those that come to us with it, and those that are attempting to finish it
This
next-
semester.
Yeah.
Right. Just thinking of the way universities work, they got, it's on a rolling term that we have to do it.
As well it should be.
Any other questions from the board? Sorry, I got a little close to the microphone there. Seeing nothing else from the board, Dr. Bullard, can we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Lockhart?
Aye.
Ms. Lauer? Aye. Dr. Powers?
Aye.
Mrs. Scott?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Burks? Mr. Irwin?
Aye. Dr. Hayward, with the sex education recommendation.
Excuse me, this one will take just a little bit longer. Many parts of this recommendation. In coming to my recommendation, I've taken into account the district's vision, mission, and values. I've tried to listen to every person that has stood before this board or in our committee, and I've weighed the thoughts of our committee members and other board members. You know, as the superintendent of Vigo County Schools, I have the honor of celebrating the transformational role that education plays in the lives of our students and ultimately in the entire community. As a district, we have a historical commitment to focusing on students and intellectual excellence. I am so proud of the way our faculty, staff, community, and families meet our students where they are, take them to where they need to go, with the understanding that the journey is not always going to be perfect. It's not always going to be a straight line. But for educators, for many of us, the journey is our purpose. That is why I believe this discussion on sex education has captured the attention of our community. We are asking one another if our current processes meet students where they are. If it is taking them where they want to go, and if it is positively changing their lives. For the last several months, and probably much longer process than we would have liked, as our schools tried to navigate the daily pressures of the pandemic, we have heard from our community through public comment, discussion on our media, and on social media, and through 6 hours worth of public meetings devoted to hearing from teachers, community members, and community members. Our community is having these discussions in the midst of maybe what is one of the most confrontational political climates, at least in my lifetime. In education, we look for the full truth of a situation, assessing both what could be known and those things that may remain in doubt. When times are hard, education has the endurance and the vigor to stay in a place of tension, and not only stay in that place, but find educational opportunities there. We have heard from medical doctors and other healthcare officials who have a spectrum of opinions on our approach to sex education. We've heard from local doctors who are in disagreement. Historically, our sex education curriculum is embedded within the health and wellness standards and has been enriched by a week-long community program. We had 2 professional sex education curriculum evaluations from medical practitioners from the same Indiana Health Network that had differing opinions on our community's program. We heard from faith leaders, parents, students, community members, all with varying degrees of opinions and experiences, and all encouraging us to not be bullied by those who are in disagreement with them. We heard from faculty who were supportive, and we heard from faculty that were not. I find meaning in our new strategic plan. It's not even 1 year old. The year of 2020, it seems like it may be 3 years old. Our strategic plan focuses on growth in Vigo County. We're a college town, and each year our universities and colleges welcome thousands of young people with a wide range of viewpoints, backgrounds, ethnicities, and sexual orientations. These students, just like everyone who calls Vigo County home, are here to create a life. It's my hope our strategic plan would help guide educational delivery so that we might attract and retain people in Vigo County. We want to keep students here to raise their families, and we need to do so in an inclusive environment so that everyone feels welcome. Our strategic plan asks us to work together with our community, inspire our students to discover their talents, and to rise to their greatest potential. It asks us to build on the strengths of our diverse community and create an engaging, comprehensive educational environment that supports the growth of lifelong learners. My recommendation is based in part on the following: the guidance of our strategic plan, the understanding that many items brought before the committee are not only applicable to sex education, but our entire school model. Civility, inclusion, acceptance, love for your neighbor are not just items to discuss in sex education. They should be the core of who we are. This recommendation is based on the understanding that public education should be able to hold and maintain different and sometimes conflicting beliefs while still addressing the growth of students. Our recommendation is based on part from the various opinions, materials, and curriculum I have received regarding this topic, based upon the respect that I have for teachers in the classroom and their opinions, based upon the fact that this recommendation has the potential to impact other decisions regarding operations. This recommendation comes from the fact that my belief that the health education should be a component of a well-rounded education, and that public schools must provide medically accurate and age-appropriate information. The belief that instruction should use materials and instructional strategies that respond to culturally diverse individuals, families, communities in a respectful and effective manner. It is clear from our community conversations and conversations as administrators and board members that we must refocus our efforts on building a school environment that continues to value difference, diversity, and inclusion. The climate will take time to develop, and our work will not stand, or should not stand, ever silent, because it should never end. Climate is bigger than one curriculum and is the environment in which we deliver education. We must also focus our sex education curriculum on delivering Indiana standards within the climate. The following document that you have received details the Indiana Health and Wellness Standards relating to sex education, including the alignment with the week-long Creating Positive Relationships program, which offers enrichment opportunities paired with the curriculum. My recommendation asks for the CPR curriculum, pending subcommittee approval, to now be delivered by VCSC teachers. In my recommendation, we propose this for our sex education plan. It must be research-based, evidence-based, and/or best practice-based. The optional enrichment activities taught by VCSC teachers through the Creative Positive Relationships curriculum will be required to be medically accurate and in accordance with the CDC. The Deputy Superintendent will chair a subcommittee to review and approve the updated CPR curriculum prior to VCSC teachers teaching these enrichment activities on an opt-in basis. The subcommittee will include the Director of Diversity, Inclusion, and Civility, 3 high school department chairpersons, the VCSC nursing chairperson, a middle school principal, a middle school guidance counselor, and an officer from the Vigo County Parent Network. The subcommittee will consider state standards, medical reviewer comments, professional judgment, and teacher, counselor, parent experiences as they review and approve the updated CPR curriculum. The proposed education plan focuses on VCS teachers providing factual information that fulfills Indiana state standards throughout the year's curriculum, with an optional week of enrichment activities taught by VCSC teachers. The opt-in CPR curriculum provides guidance on relationships. Our educational plan asks us to look at specific content standards for each grade level and fulfill them. Our proposed sex education plan includes a description at each grade level of what is being taught, summarizing essential information for teachers and parents. It's clear about who will be presenting the material and provides families with the opportunity to review materials prior to instruction. It offers the opportunity for families to include or exclude their children from participating. It emphasizes, in accordance with the Indiana regulations, that abstinence from sexual intercourse, when practiced consistently and correctly, is the only method that is 100% effective against unattended pregnancy and sexually transmitted infections and diseases. It provides students with the opportunity to learn related to healthy relationships and sexual behaviors. It teaches how to develop and communicate sexual and reproductive boundaries, including declining unwanted sexual advances and accepting the refusal of unwanted sexual advances through the use of refusal and negotiation skills. Finally, it does not devalue, ignore, or shame those students who have had or are having sexual relationships. The last component is a family opt-in component. Families will have 21 days to opt in to each grade level's week of enrichment lessons in grades 6 through 9. After 21 days, a reminder will be sent and families will have 10 days to respond. If there is no response, or if a family does not opt in, students will only be taught Indiana standards by Vigo County School Corporation teachers. The administration is asking approval for this 2020 sex education plan.
Mr. President, I move approval.
Mr. Lockhart has made a motion to approve. Before we have discussion, I believe we need a second.
I'll second.
Mr. Lockhart made a motion to approve. Mrs. Lauer seconded that. I believe now would be an appropriate time for discussion and questions for Dr. Hayward about his plan. Dr. Hayward, you talked about the subcommittee. The subcommittee would be headed by Dr. Goller. So any recommendation you're making in regards to creating positive relationships is dependent on that subcommittee giving the rubber stamp of approval that says it is inclusive, that says that it does not have religion in it, that says that it is medically accurate, correct?
Yeah, I believe the things that we have heard in community meetings, I believe, can be found in the CPR curriculum as it currently stands. If there's medical information that is inaccurate, we'll be asking the subcommittee to review that.
Will there be a health expert on the subcommittee?
Yes, the head of nursing for our district would be a part of that committee. But beyond that, we've heard from countless students about shaming and activities in which students were felt embarrassed. We would have to make sure that those no longer existed as well. And it would need to be inclusive.
The subcommittee is made up of VCSC staff.
And one parent from the parent network.
And I noticed recommendation, the Crisis Pregnancy Center was not mentioned one time. You know, I think a lot of times the Creating Positive Relationships program and the Crisis Pregnancy Center get lumped together. But you did not mention the Crisis Pregnancy Center at all. Can you expand on that, please?
Yeah, I think there is a line that can be drawn from CPC to the Crisis Pregnancy Center, and a line drawn from them to our schools. I think it would be part of this subcommittee's efforts to ensure what that line looks like.
Would the committee meet on a regular basis, or only when there's issues that arise, or both?
Yeah, I think right now, there's a lot of focus on CPR. It's something that's been in our district for 30 years. But in the end, it may not end up being that program. It may be a different program that, once we've looked at what CPR has done and offered, it could be a different program that we would ask to be a opt-out of what we're doing in the classroom. But we've just not done any research into what those others look like.
But to be clear,
What is your objection to looking at other curriculum?
Really nothing at this point. Probably seeing that the rest of this school year was kind of a safety net for us. I don't believe we'll be inviting visitors in. So I think it would be a matter of time and asking the subcommittee to do just that.
we do have our own curriculum that's being used right now, and that is a part of your recommendation, correct? We have our textbook and supplemental materials. That's still a part of your recommendation, correct?
Yeah, the Indiana law requires us to have a sex education program that is focused on abstinence-based at the base level. I think we are using that in our instructional materials, in our health book, and then in our teen health book, and now our supplementary materials with that. That would become our core instruction. That would be what guides our teachers on a daily basis. Now, last year we had 4 students, I believe, Dr. Goller, that opted out of what we did last year. Probably the opt-in model of what they went into was not as structured as what we would have liked. We believe, or at least I believe, that we will have more than 4 that will opt out, and trying to find a curriculum and instructional days for those students is really what the committee is going to do. And I think a good place to start would be CPR. It may not be where you've been.
So to clarify, were this motion to pass and/or were this motion to fail, what will continue in the high school is using the Pearson Education Health Book and Supplement, and what will continue in the middle school is the textbook and supplementary materials from McGraw-Hill, which is Let's Go Teen Health. So that's what's being used now. That will, under your recommendation, continues to be used for that portion, and if the motion fails, will continue to be used. The question is, if this motion fails, what happens to those students who are, by Indiana law, able to opt out of the sex ed?
Well, we would look to go back, create that, and bring that back to the board at a later date. But I think you're right, Susan. Regardless of how we leave here today, the base room class material that I'm recommending is the McGraw-Hill health book and the Pearson health book and the supplementary materials.
Which is really somewhat different than in the past, because in the past, it was primarily focused on the Creating Positive Relationships program being the opt-out. You know, you had to send in a paper to say, I don't want that, and that's why we only had 4 students. Whereas now, to opt out of sex ed, you would be opting out of the textbook materials, and then you would have the option to opt in to a updated CPR curriculum. So the only students that would be seeing that material is somebody whose family sent in a letter that said, I want my students to be in that class. You wouldn't be in that class without a signed parent letter, correct?
Well, that's correct. I actually think there is another opt-out option. And that is if you don't like either of the things that we are presenting.
Correct, that would be state law, correct?
When do you anticipate this committee will start? As we're talking about the program being ready to go forward in the fall.
I think their work starts now. Again, I will state that I do not see, not just CPR, but other groups being allowed into our buildings because of COVID issues. So I think this entire semester, the board knows we have a few other things on our plate, but it may be best to ask Dr. Goller that question, but I would see right after the first of the year.
And then,
That sounds reasonable, first of the year. We need, when CPR has it ready for us, then we get the group together and go through it line by line, page by page, and see the edits that are made and look and make sure that we feel that that's appropriate.
So at this point, we're a chunk of the way, that's what the technical term is, a chunk of the way through the first semester for both the middle school and the high school. Have they, at this point, had the sex ed portion of their health class?
Dr. Goller?
The sixth grade has, sixth grade, it's in the family and consumer science
Okay.
curriculum, and they are in the midst of it. Seventh and eighth, it's in the science curriculum when they study bacteria and viruses, and it's in the spring.
Okay, and high schools?
They're in the midst of it because it's in the ninth grade credit class.
Okay, so right now, have we had students opting out of that instruction?
They could, I have not heard of any, Dr.
Okay.
Powers, very seldom do we have that happen out of our curriculum.
And none of it is CPR at this moment, because,
Yeah, they've been doing it to the schools. I mean, they've
well,
been,
this semester.
yeah,
No, CPR is not in there right now.
not at this today, but they've been in since the start of school through Zoom or things like that.
So has CPR been delivered?
Not to my knowledge, they haven't this year.
I believe they have been, Karen, not to
I mean, I
disagree.
remember they asked, I didn't know they actually were in.
Yeah, I think there was maybe a high school teacher that had, I don't know, I don't think it was a physical presence, but I think it was some sort of,
I think that, yes, she asked for resources and, I don't know if the resources were delivered, I don't know.
but I believe that's been corrected.
I had a question. Of course, I'm worried about CPR. As with anything, it's not 50-50, it's not all good, it's not all bad, it's not down the middle. I think continuing a relationship with them isn't the best thing for our kids. I don't even think it's the best thing for the community. I've spent over a year on this, and as a former childbirth instructor, I have sat with 14, 15, 16-year-old girls. It will give you a completely different idea of what these kids need to learn and at what age they need to learn it. CPR is missing the mark. We have years of this, and the outpouring from the community that I have heard from is to move on. I cannot tell you how many times I have read the word archaic in the last year. Medically inaccurate. I don't understand why we're stuck in the mud with this particular program. We can have our own program. It isn't as though if we find something that they do that we like, or somebody over here does something that we do, we can put those together. But to continue this relationship feels like a continuation of our last year. If you'll grant me the grace of a cliche, it's kicking the can down the road. Now, our kids deserve better, our teachers deserve better. We can do a better job. It isn't like we don't have resources here. So why are we doing this? I feel like there's a current here that I don't like. I don't know if it's religious, I don't know if it's political, but we have been so maligned and accused of so many sexual fantasy programs that we want to bring in, that I'm distrusting of the whole process. Because that was never my intent. This was pointed out to me, and once it was brought to my attention that this was not medically accurate, that we had decades of kids that felt shamed. We've had kids in their 20s and 30s cry in front of us. They have been imprinted on for the rest of their life by this program. Why, with all those negatives, would we want to keep them in any way? And go to all the trouble of reviewing their problems when we could have our own program that we've already reviewed, that we don't have to check it to see if there's problems in it. I just find it disturbing that we want to keep this group.
And that was a question that Rosemary and I had posed to you, Dr. Hayward, at the end of January of this year, which is really what's going on. You know, what is going on here? We asked you, why the dig-in? Why the protection? Why the stall? What's going on here?
As I would sit and listen, I think this is a very divisive issue in our community. I don't think there is a person that is sat in these meetings and would disagree. I'm an educator. I value the words of our chairs who stood before us and said they like the CPR curriculum. We probably had as many parents as we for CPR as against CPR. So I don't see it as digging in for a particular curriculum. I see it as we're divided. Here's a choice for parents to make. And maybe when you think about choice in the light of COVID, you know, our parents have asked us, what are our choices for educational models? Is it face-to-face? Is it virtual? Is it hybrid? I think in sex education, we can see what the emotion is around that. And so I think this recommendation, and we recognize that there are some deficiencies within CPR, and so we want to attack those, but I think this recommendation provides that choice that a parent can opt in to that program. In the same way that they've chosen what educational model their students would attend this year. That's where part of my heart is in bringing this recommendation. I would go so far to say as if the committee could not the subcommittee could not get to a place where we could confidently come back in and say, these things are done, these things have been met, these changes have gone, that we would move on and continue to look at others. Because I believe we will find a greater need for opt-out under this method than we did the last.
So I think what I'm hearing, and this is to kind of address what Ms. Scott said, you know, you said, why can't we take some of this and some of that and put something together?
I said we could.
Right, we could, yes.
If we were going to go that direction. That's the reason I don't understand why we've decided to take CPR and edit their problems for them, find the miscalculations, the medical inaccuracies. Why is that incumbent on us to make sure that their program is okay? They're getting a great favor here that I don't understand why that would be something that they would deserve. We don't do this for any other programs, any other community groups. Why are they in such great favor with this school corporation? And I can tell you that is a question many citizens have posed to me. And I disagree with that. We've heard from as many for as against. Because I have a notebook this thick at home that has all of the contacts, all of the check marks, and I can tell you overwhelmingly, parents have said, get this out. This is not healthy for our children. This is, as I said before, archaic. Group, this will come back to haunt us if we keep this in our schools.
Well, I think that's why the proposal is to make the changes. And the committee will have that authority, not CPR. It will be a staff of VCSC, teachers and professionals who will make that opinion. And as you said, Rosemary, it's, half good, some's not so good. I mean, it is an imbalance. I agree with that, but I think there are some saving ideas. It has been such a tragic misuse of the term. Creating positive relations sounds like a wonderful program, but it has been twisted a bit, and it has hurt a lot of students in the past, and it is not realistic in today's society at all. And so it's got to have major changes. It's got to have a major operation to remove a lot and to correct a lot, because we wanted scientifically, medically accurate. We wanted to recognize the diversity of our students in today's world, and that's what's got to take place. And I trust, with Dr. Goller leading the charge on a committee, that those ideals can be met. I mean, I think we have to work on it. I think Karen's right. We start at the beginning of the year, which is just a month and a half away, and we get it ready, and it's going to take observation and dedication and supervision by that committee, and then it will come before the board. It's got to be presented to the board again to see if it meets our needs. And we knew from the very beginning this was going to be a no-win situation, because it became very politicized, and as Joni said too, there's an aura of where is this coming from? Is it church-based? Is it bias-based, or what's the aura around it? And it's murky, but I think we have to move forward. And I like our the new pamphlets that are part of the school corporation, the students that they will be using. I think that's a good addition, and I think the committee is going to have its work cut out for it. But I sure don't want to carry this on. And each of us have been involved in this for over a year, and each of us have heard the intensity of comments from both sides. I mean, there are people entrenched in their ideas on both sides of this situation. So I think we have to deal with that. We're educating all students, and we have to move forward to do that. And we've spent enough time working on this.
My problem with another committee is, we had a committee. You remember, Joni?
I do remember
A
that.
committee that never met. People who were supposed to be on the committee that were never contacted. The committee never got together. Before COVID. We cannot use COVID as an excuse. So here we are now, another committee. And that committee wasn't elected to represent the citizens. We were. That's what I mean when we're kicking this can down the road.
Do you have a friendly amendment to the motion?
I think that we should cancel. I don't know if there's an appropriate parliamentary procedure
I believe we have a motion and a second on the
There's a
floor.
motion on the second on the floor that has both of what would be continuing, what is currently taught, and what the option for people who want to opt out. So those families who don't want to have the Pearson or the McGraw-Hill sex ed, they can opt out, and the motion is to opt into an approved revised CPR program. So an amendment would be to change a friendly amendment would be to change one part of that. So for instance, if you had an alternative for a different opt-in, or an alternative, what happens to, if so 3,000 students only opt out of our program, what is the alternative for them to do? So that would be what a friendly amendment could provide. Or the friendly amendment could say, we're going to let them sit in study hall for 5 days and not have any sex ed at all.
Well, we already have whatever sex ed we teach. Right now, what we are
Correct,
teaching,
but legally-
they can opt out of that, so we don't have to vote on that because they
But
already
we
have
do
that.
have a motion and a second on the floor we are
floor.
discussing, so we will vote on something tonight because we have a motion and a second. And I believe.
Well, as
we-
part of that discussion, I'm just reminding everyone that they already have the option right now to opt
Right.
out. We don't have to vote for that.
I was just asking, well, so if it fails, we go back to that, but we have a motion we have to act on. So the question is, we can make a friendly amendment to modify what the opt-in option is. We could say, or the motion can go forward as is, fail or pass. If it fails, then we keep this, and there is nothing that those students will do if they opt out. Correct? Would that be what the case is right now?
Right now, in an opt-out situation, whether it's in an English class or whatever content area it is in, the teacher that is responsible for that student comes up with an alternative assignment.
Okay, which could be related to the standards, which still has to be related to the standards, so the students are guaranteed to see those standards?
Yes, it would still be related to the health standards, it just would not be that content.
Okay.
First of all, I have great confidence in any committee that Dr. Glover chairs. Any curriculum committee, any group that she brings together, I have great confidence in that. And I'm probably embarrassing her. But I have no doubt that when she goes through curriculum, her group goes through curriculum, whether it's sex ed materials or math or science, that there's a rigorous review to be sure everything is met. So I feel really good about that part of it. I also, when we started this process, and I think I commented to some survey, I feel this way, that had to be an opt-in option and not an opt-out. They had to, for CPR to be included in our curriculum, would have to be an opt-in, where people had to say, I want my child in that program to learn that particular curriculum. And that's the way this is, correct, Dr. Baker? So if I think, and Dr. Baker said this, I think he's tried to put together with his team, a recommendation that meets a lot of criteria, and that and also allows people options that, as we've heard from people, we've heard from a number of people who feel very strongly about CPR, from a number of people who don't. We've received emails and so forth from a lot of people both ways. But I think the thing that I feel good about is that anyone who stood up and said, I don't want my child in CPR, they won't be, and they won't have to be. They might have to be taught any of that, regardless of what the committee comes up with in terms of, as they go through the curriculum and make corrections or adjust it or whatever. Can something be amended? Yes, you can amend the motion, as we all know, and change the motion. I think since
Right, I was just, given the comments, I was
Describe
giving an offer of a friendly amendment to that, which has to be accepted as well, but that if there's already decided opt-in alternative that beyond CPR, that somebody wanted to provide as a friendly amendment, that could be provided as a friendly amendment if that amendment is accepted and seconded.
And could that include that friendly amendment, it being another program that's reviewed, beside, or look for another program for parents or guardians to opt into?
A friendly amendment could be anything, but it could be that, yes.
Okay.
I think, I mean, where we're at here now is the superintendent has made a recommendation, we've got a motion and a second. We've had lots of discussion. I think it'd be appropriate to vote on it. If it doesn't pass, then we kind of go from there, and if there's an amendment that somebody wants to make that gives it a better chance to pass, we do that.
I'd like to call for the vote.
Thank you, Mrs. Lauer. Any objections?
Procedurally, call a question and we run them.
Dr. Goller, can you get a roll call, please?
Mr. Lockhart?
Aye.
Mrs. Lauer?
Aye.
Dr. Powers?
Aye.
Ms. Scott?
No.
Ms. Wise?
No.
Mr. Burks? Mr. Irwin?
Aye. 4 votes. The motion passes. Anything else from board members before we conclude this evening? Our next business meeting will be December 14th. It will be a virtual meeting again, meaning we will all be at the same location, but it will be streamed online, and we will take comments via different